Just a few weeks ago, it really felt like the United States and Iran were on a collision course. I mean, they were hurtling towards a conflict that could have set the entire Middle East on fire. And then, almost out of nowhere, a ceasefire was announced. And the broker? A player that pretty much nobody saw coming. So how on earth did Pakistan step in and pull two global powers back from the very brink of war? Let's get into it. All right, so here's how we're going to break this all down. We'll start with just how close we came to a major conflict. Then we'll look at Pakistan's pretty unique role in all of this. We'll break down their diplomatic strategy, see how the world reacted, and then finally, we'll get into the super high-stakes negotiations that are happening in Islamabad right now. So first, to really get the weight of this ceasefire, you have to remember what the mood was like just a few weeks back. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The world was seriously, genuinely bracing for an all-out war. And I mean, it doesn't get much more serious than this. This quote right here from President Trump, it was the final, stark ultimatum. It put a deadline on the whole thing. The world was literally holding its breath. Now, what's absolutely wild when you look at this timeline is just how fast everything spiraled out of control. We're talking about 6 weeks. In just 6 weeks, we went from an assassination to missile strikes to a full-on blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. That blockade threw the global economy into a complete tailspin, causing these massive fuel shortages everywhere. And then, right at the 11th hour, with that clock ticking down, an unexpected player stepped onto the scene to try and defuse this ticking time bomb. And yeah, this is the big question, right? The one on everyone's mind. How in the world did Pakistan, a country in South Asia, become the essential mediator for a massive crisis brewing in the Middle East? Well, it turns out Pakistan was in this really unique sweet spot. On one hand, you've got their deep security ties with the US and real credibility with the Trump administration. They were even the ones representing Iran's interests in Washington. But on the other hand, they share this huge border with Iran. They have deep historical and religious bonds. I mean, it's home to the world's second largest Shiite population. No one else, literally no other country, had that kind of trust on both sides of the aisle. But look, this wasn't just Pakistan being a good Samaritan. This was driven by some pretty urgent self-interest. A war would have totally wrecked their economy, which depends on oil from the strait. It would have created chaos on their western border. And it would have forced them to make an impossible choice between two key allies, Iran and Saudi Arabia. So for them, this was a massive opportunity to protect themselves and, at the same time, totally elevate their status on the world stage. Okay, so that's the why. Now let's get into the how. What was the actual strategy, the playbook Pakistan used to pull off this incredible diplomatic win? I think this quote from TRT World just nails it. It captures this fascinating blend of old-school tactics and super modern tech. This wasn't about big, flashy public meetings. This was quiet, back-channel, old-fashioned shuttle diplomacy. But it was all happening on encrypted messaging apps. And here's their 3-step playbook, and it was pretty brilliant. Step 1, they didn't pick a side publicly. They just stayed totally neutral while talking to everyone behind the scenes. Step 2, they built a coalition. They got buy-in from other key regional powers like Turkey and Saudi Arabia. And then, finally, with that support locked in, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif made that one critical last-minute call to President Trump. And that was the call that sealed the deal. And wow, the payoff for all this risky diplomacy, it was huge, and it was immediate. This ceasefire completely changed Pakistan's standing in the world, and everyone took notice. The international press immediately got how big a deal this was. You had The Independent calling it one of Pakistan's most significant diplomatic wins in years. Then Bloomberg pointed out the bigger strategic shift, right? That Pakistan had just repositioned itself from being on the sidelines to becoming a credible central dealmaker. And the diplomat really drove that point home, saying this one act moved Pakistan from the margins right into the heart of international diplomacy. It was, for all intents and purposes, a total rebranding. All of which brings us to right now. Because the really hard part, turning a temporary truce into a real, lasting peace, is just beginning in Pakistan's capital, and you better believe the entire world is watching. Just to make these talks happen safely, get this, an incredible 10,000 security personnel have been deployed across Islamabad. I mean, the city is basically on lockdown. It's become a fortress. The entire diplomatic red zone is sealed off with shipping containers. Top-secret Blue Book security protocols are in effect. And just to give you an idea, the U.S. Vice President is moving around in a convoy of up to 100 vehicles. It's like a mini army, and it just shows you how incredibly high the stakes are here. So, who are the key players in the room, the ones trying to hammer this thing out? From the US, you have Vice President J.D. Vance and Jared Kushner. And representing Iran are Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf and Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. These are the people with the monumental task of trying to find a pathway to peace.
But, and this is a huge but, nobody's expecting this to be easy. This statement from Iran's top negotiator said right when he landed in Islamabad. It just lays bare the decades of deep, deep distrust that's hanging over every single conversation. And this table, wow, it really lays out just how far apart they are on the big stuff. Take the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. says it has to be an international waterway. Iran wants the right to coordinate all traffic. Or the conflict in Lebanon. The U.S. says that's a separate issue. Iran says a truce there has to be part of the deal. Sanctions, same thing. Their starting positions are practically on different planets. Overcoming this is going to take a miracle.
And that's really what this all comes down to, isn't it? Against all odds, Pakistan's quiet diplomacy managed to pull everyone back from the edge and secure a fragile truce. But as the world holds its breath and watches Islamabad, the real question is, can that same magic actually turn this truce into a real lasting peace?